15 poorest countries with single women due to lack of men who love them. Given the world economy today, it shouldn't be surprising to hear that most of the countries in the world are not doing so well. But did you know that most poor nations have a lot of gorgeous single women too? And these women are very likely to stay single for the rest of their lives because there aren't simply enough men in their countries for them to settle down with. Unless some foreign tourist comes to sweep them off their feet, these beautiful women will remain stuck alone forever. Let's look at 15 of the poorest countries with countless single women. Number 15, Latvia. Not only does Latvia have a very high ratio of single females, but they also have some of the tallest women in the world. That does not mean that they are not pretty, because the women of Latvia are some of the most beautiful anywhere. But overall, the Latvians have a very small population, as there are less than 2 million of them in the world, out of which 54% are women. Latvia was the most industrialized of the 3 Baltic states, but after independence from the Soviet Union, most of its industries were privatized. This created an imbalance in the economy of the country. These days, they rely heavily on trade from other European countries. However, Latvians have recently adapted and are one of the leading places in the world of entrepreneurs. They have one of the highest internet speeds and are using it to great effect. The fact remains that women far outnumber men in Latvia. While more boys are born in the country, the male mortality ratio is very high. Women dominate in education as well, which results in even fewer eligible men in Latvia for these beautiful women. There are simply not enough men who can understand and respect women, so these ladies end up single for most of their adult lives. What do you think about Latvia? Let us know in the comments. Number 14, Armenia. Armenia has the highest female-to-male ratio in the world, with 55% women. But the women here are truly breathtaking. Even Mark Twain was smitten with their beauty and wrote about them in his book, The Innocents Abroad. The most shocking thing in Armenia is that sex-selective abortion is still practiced in the country. More boys than girls are born, but due to a mixture of high mortality rate and men leaving Armenia for employment opportunities abroad, women are often left alone. This mostly includes a population between the ages of 15 to 29. Domestic violence is also a very common cause for women opting to stay single in Armenia. According to a UNHCR report, more than 8% of women reported cases of domestic abuse or violence. The actual numbers may be even higher. The country hasn't been doing all that well financially. It is landlocked, which makes it dependent on its neighbors to trade, which include Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Iran. Even though Armenia was once huge, its borders are now limited to a smaller area. This is because of years of Ottoman and Soviet invasions. Armenia largely relies on the export of liquor. Some of the best wines in the oldest wineries in the world are still made in Armenia. The Ararat brandy was a favorite of Winston Churchill's, and it is said that he ordered 400 bottles of it every year. Have you tried Armenia brandy? Tell us what you think in the comments. Number 13, Belarus. Sandwiched by Poland, Latvia, Ukraine, Russia, and Lithuania, Belarus is another landlocked country on the list. It is often referred to as the lungs of Europe, as almost 40% of Belarus is covered in forests. It was once part of the Soviet Union, but it gained independence at the end of the Cold War. However, Belarus has not been able to stabilize itself economically. It depended largely on the Soviet Union, but after independence, it has struggled. Belarus was also badly affected by the recession in 2008, as its manufacturing industry suffered more than anything else. The women in Belarus have broken into the top 20 most beautiful in the world. The ratings were based on international beauty contests such as Miss World and Miss Universe. However, there is a huge problem with gender equality in the country. For more than 30 years, Alexander Lukashenko has been the president of Belarus. He has often gone on record to make misogynistic and sexist remarks. He claims that women cannot hold leadership positions in the government because they would be unable to bear the burden. This led to countrywide protests in 2020 and 2021, where women activists were especially threatened with rape and violence. Even though the women in Belarus outnumber men by almost 800,000, they don't feel safe in the country. The authorities have been given free rein to use any means necessary to deny women their rights. What do you think of Belarusian women? Share your thoughts below. Number 12. Ukraine. Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe in terms of area. It stretches almost at 250,000 square miles, which is twice the size of Italy. Since its independence from the Soviet Union, Ukraine has suffered economically. It started to recover at the start of the 21st century, but conflict with Russia has taken its toll on the country. It was once known as the breadbasket of Europe because of its wheat production. The country heavily relies on its agriculture and also produces sunflower seeds, which are exported around the world. However, the war has hugely impacted their economy, and women have suffered more than anyone. According to reports, almost 60% of women have been displaced from their homes and are forced to seek shelter elsewhere. There is also increased violence against women, as soldiers have been known to rape them without remorse. Even though the country was making efforts to make living conditions better for women before the war, Ukraine was far from an ideal place for females. UNFPA reported that a staggering 75% of women had reported cases of some form of violence. The country was already notorious for human trafficking, and the war has only increased those numbers as well. Ukrainian women are stunning without a doubt, but they are seeking to lead peaceful lives away from war and the existing issues within their own country. There are some stereotypes about them that are not true. They do have stunning bodies mostly, but that doesn't mean that they are all submissive or gold diggers. Number 11. Moldova. Moldova is probably the least visited country in Europe. The region was first under Ottoman rule, but then the Russians took over, so their culture and tradition are largely influenced by Russia. It only shares borders with Ukraine and Romania. The women in Moldova are known for their loyalty and traditional family values. That is what makes them attractive, lifelong partners to most men. Even though the country is small with limited economic freedom, people prioritize education over everything else. There are 90 men for every 100 women in Moldova. This is because of high mortality rates and because men sometimes choose to go abroad for job opportunities. However, women are more educated than men, but they earn far less. The country is still dominated by patriarchy, even though Moldova has a female president. People still perceive women to be inferior in society, and even women themselves sometimes do not have the confidence or self-esteem to speak up for their rights. Moldova serves as a refuge for Ukrainians fleeing from the war with Russia. A lot of the people from Ukraine don't want to be too far away from their homes, so they have found shelter in Moldova. The country's economy isn't great enough to support the refugees, so the Czech Republic supports them in taking care of the Ukrainians, as well as Moldovan citizens. Number 10. Montenegro. Montenegro is a Balkan country by the Adriatic Sea. Throughout its history, it has hosted all different kinds of cultures from around the world. That is why it has a very rich and diverse heritage. There are Venetian walls, Roman mosaics, churches, monasteries, mosques, and even the more recent socialist-style buildings. The people in Montenegro are generally warm, and this includes the women as well. The ladies have beautiful, striking eyes and hourglass figures. To top it off, they are usually great cooks, and they hold traditional values in high regard. Even though the total population of the country is just over 500,000, and most of it is dominated by women, it isn't easy for women in Montenegro to stand equal to men. Selective abortion is still practiced here because families would rather have a son than a daughter. For younger women, living under such conditions is not acceptable at all. They would prefer to stay single than marry a man who would force them to bear sons and be unfaithful to them. Today, Montenegro is a haven for remote workers. It is easy to obtain a digital nomad visa, the cost of living is very low, and the internet connectivity is reliable. And to top it all off, it is a beautiful place to live in. Despite being a popular destination for visitors, Montenegro has a very poor economy. The country mostly relies on agriculture, and even though they are on the Adriatic Sea, fishing is not a viable option. Employment is low in the country itself, and the locals don't have many opportunities to earn a living. Would you move to Montenegro? Tell us what you think. Number 9. Nepal. Nepal is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. It is famous for its mountains, colorful culture, and delicious food. Even though it is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world, the country is still poor compared to its gigantic neighbors, India and China. It heavily relies on aid from its neighbors as Nepal has next to no industry except for tourism. It has some of the highest peaks in the world, including Mount Everest, Mount Kanchenjunga, and Mount Makalu. These mountains are more than 8,000 meters high and are the reason why so many climbers are attracted to Nepal. The people mostly follow Hinduism and Buddhism in the region. Gautama Buddha was said to be born in a village known as Lumbini. The Maya Devi temple was constructed on the spot where Buddha was born, and millions of people visit it every year. Due to their religious roots, the Nepalese women are largely conservative, but they are great homemakers and loyal partners. Many of these women are often left alone in the country when husbands, brothers, and sons have to go abroad for employment opportunities. Domestic violence is another issue in Nepal, as women are considered to be inferior to men. Some of these cases also arise from disputes with dowries. The practice may have been abolished in most of the world, but women can't hope to find a husband unless they can provide him with a substantial dowry. Number 8. Kazakhstan. The word Kazakh translates to wanderer, so Kazakhstan is the land of wanderers. People here are proud of their independent nature, and that is why it has more than 120 ethnicities living together. The largest of these are Kazakhs, Russians, Ukrainians, and Uzbeks. It is also the largest landlocked country in the world. It might not sound such a big deal at first, but Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country in the world by area. But the people here are not financially stable. Most of them work on agricultural lands or raise livestock. Few are given opportunities in the manufacturing industries, as it is mostly dominated by Russian and Ukrainian workers. The blend of European and Asian features makes the women in Kazakhstan stand out globally. They have strong traditional values, but they are also self-reliant and independent. This makes them ideal partners for most men. However, it is difficult for the women to settle down because they often have to pay the dowry. In exchange, the groom also has to pay the bride price. People here can't afford it in most cases, and this has led to an increasing number of single women. Number 7. El Salvador. El Salvador is the smallest country in Central America, but it is also the most densely populated. Most of the people live in the countryside. The government offers free education for children up to 9th grade, but people can't even afford to pay for supplies and transportation. The economy heavily relies on exports of agricultural products such as coffee, sugar, corn, rice, and shrimp, but that still doesn't provide enough for the people. That is why almost 3 million people live and work in the United States. Most of the locals trace their ancestry back to Indians and Spanish, so the women in El Salvador have olive skin and dark hair like most women in Central and South America, but they have fuller figures and are passionate and adventurous. But high rates of gang-related crimes in the country have confined women to more traditional roles. They are often forced to be girlfriends of gang members, and there have even been cases of sexual violence against women. Even after all the social issues the ladies in El Salvador face, they are still some of the most loyal and loving in the world. They strongly believe in family values and would stand by their men through thick and thin. Number 6. Kiribati. Kiribati comes in the division of islands that are collectively known as Micronesia. It has a total of 33 islands, which are divided into 3 island groups: the Gilbert Islands, the Phoenix Islands, and the Line Islands. Almost all of the islands in Kiribati are atolls. This makes it popular for swimming, scuba diving, and snorkeling activities. Even with countless beautiful beaches and colorful lagoons, Kiribati is one of the least visited countries in the world. The country is so remote that it has next to no opportunities for the locals. They rely on fishing and coconut farming mostly, and they use it to trade with countries like Australia, Japan, and Thailand. More recently, a major source of income for Kiribati has been licensing fees from foreign fishing fleets. The location population is just a little more than 100,000, and most people stick to their traditional customs and practices. Family life is of the utmost importance in Kiribati, and people enjoy sports like canoe racing, volleyball, and soccer. Women are central figures in their community and family life, but because they are so remote, gender equality is almost unheard of in Kiribati. There are only 3 female members of the Kiribati parliament. Even with a central government, each island has its own customs, some of which disregard a woman's right to hold property. Did you know about Kiribati? Leave your comments below. Number 5. Malawi. Often dubbed as the warm heart of Africa, Malawi has some of the friendliest people on the planet. Almost half of the locals live below the poverty line, and 70% of these are women. They don't have stable jobs or businesses to support themselves. Even then, the people of Malawi are happy to greet visitors with a smile. This includes women as well, who are friendly and open with family and friends. They are also very open-minded, welcoming, and generous. However, women in Malawi have limited opportunities when it comes to education and employment. They are generally viewed as homemakers, and their roles in society are very restricted. 1 in 4 women have experienced some kind of domestic violence or abuse. Malawi has been impacted a lot by HIV/AIDS through the years. In 2017, it was estimated that more than 1 million were living with AIDS. This, combined with an unstable political system, has created a lot of problems for the country. What do you think of this situation? Share your thoughts below. Number 4. Senegal. Senegal lies on the westernmost point of Africa towards the Atlantic Ocean. It may be one of the leading democracies in the region today, but European nations fought over the land for centuries during the colonial era. It was in a strategic location between the north and the south, and this was the reason why European traders prized it above any other land in Africa. Senegal was the center of the slave trade from the 15th to 19th century. After gaining independence from France, Senegal has become a model nation in the region. But the slave trade drove most of the men out of the region, leaving women to fend for themselves. Even these days, most men leave home in search of jobs out of the country, which is why there are only 97 men to 100 women in Senegal. The women here are reserved, but at the same time they are confident as well. They take great pride in their culture and heritage. Issues in the past, such as child marriages and female genital mutilation, have caused women to speak up for their rights. They look for partners who can understand and respect them, but there aren't enough men like that in Senegal. Even though the country is way more developed than its neighbors, it still largely relies on agricultural exports. Before independence, peanuts were the only source of income for them, but since then, they have started exporting more cash crops. Would you like to visit this place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Number 3. Zimbabwe. While Zimbabwe may be struggling today, archaeologists believe that it was once a seat of great power in ancient times. The Great Zimbabwe ruins are remnants from before the Iron Age, and the sophisticated construction of the fortress hints at a powerful and advanced civilization. According to local legend, this was the capital of Queen Sheba. Even today, it is considered to be a paradise on Earth. The Mukuvisi woodlands in Harare and the Hwange National Park have plains of green fields that are open to the public. These places are also home to several different species of mammals, birds, and plants. Like most of Africa, Zimbabwe struggles economically these days. Things were made worse during the COVID years, when most of the population fell into extreme poverty. Many lost their jobs, and businesses suffered tremendous losses. Political instability, bad harvests, and natural disasters have plagued the nation for years. The beauty standards in Zimbabwe are a little different from the world. They prefer women with large hips and pear-shaped bodies. However, the women are confident and value family life and traditions above all else. The problem they face is that they have to marry early or risk not getting married at all. Educated women above the age of 25 are often shunned by society, and they have to wait for someone to accept them or stay single for the rest of their lives. Number 2, Namibia. This is one of the least populated places on the planet, and it is largely due to its harsh landscape and severe climate. The Namib Desert is one of the oldest in the world, and it is estimated to be at least 55 million years old. The mining industry is a large part of the Namibian economy. They have some of the finest diamonds in the world, and also have mines of gold, uranium, and other precious minerals. Even then, most of the population of the country is poor. They have low standards of living, and education and job opportunities are uncommon because of high illiteracy rates, especially in the rural areas. Many indigenous tribes such as Himba have even survived to this day, and they have been unaffected by modernism in any way. They eat traditional food, practice their ancient religion, and the women wear skirts leaving their upper body completely bare. Generally, the women in Namibia are considered to be the most beautiful in all of Africa. They are loyal, respectful, and protective of their partners. Even though there are not many visitors in the country, the women are friendly and open-minded. However, women in general have trust issues when it comes to settling down. They are afraid of abusive relationships and have usually seen bad marriages in the past. On top of that, of the total population of the country, 52% are women. This leaves them with limited options in Namibia and are more likely to go for a foreign husband. Number 1. Lesotho. Also known as the Kingdom of the Sky, Lesotho is a very unique country. It is landlocked, but instead of having several neighbors, it is completely surrounded by South Africa. The whole of Lesotho is located at an elevation of more than 1,000 meters from the sea level, hence the nickname. Lesotho may be separate from South Africa, but it depends on them economically. The country itself has next to no resources except for water, so it has to ask its neighbor for help. Even the nationals of Lesotho often seek employment in South Africa. Not only does Lesotho have more women than men, but they are also more likely to be well educated. They are key figures in Lesotho society as they do most of the work, especially in rural areas. Sadly, crimes against women are high in the region, and a huge chunk of the population believes that it's okay for a man to strike a woman. The gap in education between men and women, along with social issues in the country, has led more and more young women to remain single. Most of them have also seen a lot of unhappy married women, so they would rather be alone than end up with the wrong man. That's all that we have for you today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Click on the screen for more content like this. See you in the next one.